What's up guys? Today I just wanted to take a minute and talk about what it was like when I was a freshman in my first semester at Georgia Tech. As many of you may know, I'm currently a junior here, so it's been a couple years, but I figured I'd reflect back on my experience back when I was a freshman 2 years ago. Also, I'm a computer science student, so some of the classes I'm going to be taking might be familiar to you if you're going into computer science, but I'll keep this pretty general just in case you're not in computer science. Alright, so the first thing I need to talk about actually happens before you even have your first day of class, and that would be FACET. FACET is just what we call an orientation for freshmen. For me, it happened during July, but there's a bunch of different sessions throughout the summer, depending on what works best with your schedule. Now, some people really like FACET, some people really hate FACET. I would say I'm somewhere in the middle, however, I would definitely say that FACET was useful for me. The main thing about FACET is it gives you an opportunity to get an experience of what it's going to be like on that campus in a few weeks, and really just to get you acclimated and excited for your start at Georgia Tech. FACET isn't required, however, I definitely would recommend that if you have the availability to do it, you go to FACET. Moving right along, the next thing we have to talk about naturally is course load. We did our scheduling at FACET, and coming in, I had an idea of which classes I wanted to take, but ultimately I did not end up getting the schedule that I thought I was going to get. This is mostly because a lot of the classes I wanted to take just didn't have the capacity for me to get into them in Phase 1. At Georgia Tech, we have Phase 1 registration and Phase 2 registration, so I could have tried again later, but I decided just to stick with the classes that I got. CS 1301, Math 1552, French 1001, English 1101, and CS 1100. This ended up being 14 credits, which is about what Georgia Tech recommends freshmen take in their first semester. Because I had some AP credits coming out of high school, I was able to get out of a lot of the social science classes. However, as you can see, I'm not really taking a lot of computer science classes here in my first semester at Tech. We're going to pivot away from classes here for a little bit, and we're going to start talking about the social aspect of your first year at Georgia Tech. Basically, the main thing I want you to take away from this is that I had no friends. Now, I know when a lot of people say this, they're just kidding around, but I'm serious. When I started at Georgia Tech, I had 0 friends. That's largely because I was coming from Pennsylvania. Not a lot of people from my area come to Georgia Tech, and as a result, I did not know anyone. If you've ever been in a situation like this, you know just as well as I do that it can be a little bit daunting, especially if you're an introvert. And this, coupled with the fact that I was now 700 plus miles away from my friends and my family, was tough. I had never spent more than probably 3 nights in a row away from my parents, and then here I was going to spend a month and a half, 2 months away from them for the first time ever. Fortunately though, I was excited about college, and as a result, I tried not to let those things faze me too much in my first couple weeks before I started making friends. And then, sure enough, I did start making some friends. It's a little hard in the beginning because you can't really be close with anyone the same way you are with your friends from home, but give it enough time and you'll get there. I'll briefly touch my living situation. I was living in a dorm on West Campus called Montague. This is part of FFM, and in my opinion, FFM is the best place you can stay. I was on a floor of about 36 guys, and I was sharing a dorm room with one other person. I've mentioned it in other videos, but I'll say it again here because it makes sense to. That floor for me was one of the best experiences I could have had as a freshman. To this day, most of my friends came from Montague 1, which was the floor I stayed on in Montague. This was a part of the freshman experience, so I definitely liked the housing aspect of it, but the food option was not as good. Since I was living on West Campus, my main dining option was West Village, which was newly created at the time. It's a bit different than our other 2 dining halls, which are Britain and North Ave. The main difference is those are all you can eat, and this one was not. It consists of, I think, 5 different micro restaurants, and you just order from them, and then you get your food like you would from any other normal restaurant. They do have a good variety of options there, and the food is of okay quality, but there were definitely days that I wished that it was a more traditional all-you-could-eat buffet style. There's also a Panera and a Starbucks at West Village. When I was a freshman, you could not use meal swipes at Starbucks, however that policy has since changed, so now you can use your meal swipes as a freshman at Starbucks. So I guess I'll talk a little bit about my courses now, and the main thing I think people should know is just because they're your first year courses, it does not mean that they're easy. And a big misconception is that a lot of people think that just because they're your first year courses means they're going to be easy, but the truth is a lot of people talk about failing your first test at Tech. I did not fail my first test at Tech, but a lot of people do. The reality is that a lot of these classes are designed to be weed-out classes, so the GPAs for these classes are actually lower than some of the higher level, more advanced classes that you'll take later. Alright, so let's fast forward a few weeks into the semester, and at this point I started getting involved in some other stuff outside the classroom. More specifically, I joined iOS Club, which is one of over 30 computer science clubs that we have on campus, and I started playing intramural soccer with my housing team. I definitely recommend you get involved when you're new at Tech. You don't want to overextend yourself, but at the same time, it's good just from a social perspective to get to know new people and get exposed to different groups on campus. Before I knew it, it was October, which means it was fall break. Now fall break's only 4 days, however, I appreciate any sort of break from this school, so I went home to Pennsylvania, which was really nice. Not too much else interesting happened in the few weeks after that. The next time anything big happened was when I got norovirus a few weeks later. That was a really unfortunate experience. Unfortunately, it was going around the entire campus and I happened to get it from someone else who lived on my floor. Other than that disturbance though, I really started to get into the groove of college and I just got used to what it was like to be a college student. After that was Thanksgiving break. Apparently we used to get the entire week of Thanksgiving off, but now we only get Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday off, so it's not as long, but it's definitely still nice to go home for a couple of days. Of course, naturally, then you come back and you get slammed almost immediately.
My finals.
Admittedly, my first set of finals was not too bad. I only had 3 finals and then I had a final portfolio to submit for my English class. Your first final season is definitely super scary though, because this is the first time you're ever going through finals and some of those tests can be worth as much as 40% or more of your final grade in the class. Fortunately, I studied a ton and the finals were not too bad, and as a result, I was able to get all A's for my first semester, which was a great way to start my time at Tech. And that pretty much wraps up my first semester at Tech. Obviously there's a ton of things I glossed over. I wanted to make sure I kept this video pretty short, but if you have questions, make sure you leave them down below in the comments. I'll hang out down there if you have any questions for me. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and hit that thumbs up button. I really appreciate it. If you're new here and you want to see more content like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Alright, that's it, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.